It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon in Harlan, but by sunset, 12 children and one driver had entered a road that doesn't exist on any map. The air in Harlan that afternoon was colder than usual. Autumn leaves covered the narrow mountain roads, and the old yellow bus number 56 rattled as it rolled down Main Street. Inside were children aged 6 to 13, laughing, teasing, tossing paper balls at the driver. Mr. Daniel Creighton, a man known for his patience and quiet smile. He'd been driving that route for 12 years. Same road, same stops, same forest path that led to the mining camp where most of the children lived. But that day, something about the air felt off. A faint mist hung low, even though it wasn't the season for fog. At 3:15 p.m., witnesses saw the bus turning toward Briar Hollow Road, a narrow dirt lane between two ridges. Locals said that road hadn't been used for years since a landslide buried part of it. But no one questioned Daniel. They assumed it was a shortcut, maybe an attempt to get the kids home before the rain. At 3:45 p.m., the bus vanished. The first call came from a worried mother when her son didn't return home. Then another. By dusk, 12 families were gathered near the schoolyard, staring down the empty mountain road. Police searched through the night. They found nothing, not even tire marks leaving the main road. The next morning, the search widened. Helicopters circled the hills. Dogs sniffed along the creeks and abandoned mines. Volunteers carried lanterns, shouting names into the forest. But all they heard was the echo of their own voices. Then, around the third day, strange stories began to spread. A miner claimed he saw a bus through the fog the night before. He said it was parked by the river bend, lights on, engine humming. When he approached, the bus slowly rolled backward into the mist and vanished. A week later, another witness came forward, an old woman living by the foothills. She said she woke at 2 a.m. to children's laughter outside her cabin. When she looked through the curtains, she saw small shadows moving between the trees and the faint reflection of headlights behind them. By the time she stepped outside, everything was silent again. Sheriff Rowland wrote in his report, "No physical evidence found. Locals reporting visions and auditory illusions possibly caused by stress and exhaustion, but that didn't stop the rumors. Some said Daniel Creighton wasn't the one driving that day, that another man dressed like him had taken the wheel. Others believed the bus drove off the ridge and sank into one of the flooded coal pits that dotted the mountains. Yet every pit was drained and searched. Nothing. Weeks passed. Parents refused to send their kids to school. Posters of the missing children hung across Harlan County, fluttering in the wind. But as winter came, the case went cold. Still, one thing never left the minds of the townsfolk: the sound. Every few nights, around the same hour the bus disappeared, drivers claimed to hear the faint squeal of brakes, then laughter, then silence. Some said if you stood near Briar Hollow Road long enough, you could hear the bus engine idling deep within the fog. By spring, the town tried to move on. But the forest didn't forget. Birds stopped nesting near the hollow. Animals avoided the path. And no matter how many times the county workers cleared it, the dirt road always seemed to reappear, leading nowhere, just fading into mist. 2 years later, the forest started talking, and the people who listened never slept again. By 1970, Harlan had almost forgotten the bus. Almost. Families moved away, and the old road to Briar Hollow was closed off with steel barriers. But the story didn't stay buried. Strange things began to happen, small at first, like whispers carried by the wind. One night, a truck driver named Frank Miller was passing through the old highway that cut across the mountains. He slowed down when his radio started hissing with static. Through the crackle, a child's voice broke through, soft, distant, and trembling. "Bus 56. We're lost. Please help us!" Frank slammed on the brakes. He looked around, headlights cutting through the fog. No one was there. He called the sheriff's office, shaking, saying a prank call had come through his CB radio. But the dispatcher checked. No transmissions were logged at that frequency. The next week, hunters found something buried near the old road. Half covered in mud was a child's lunchbox, rusted shut. When they pried it open, inside was a half-rotten sandwich and a folded drawing. 12 smiling stick figures, a yellow bus, and the words, "We're going to see the mountains." Experts dated the paper to 1968. Word spread fast. Curiosity brought reporters and ghost hunters into town. Locals hated it. They said outsiders didn't understand the weight of that forest, how quiet it had become, how cold the air felt even in summer. Then came the sound recordings. A college team from Lexington brought reel-to-reel machines to capture ambient noise around Briar Hollow. On the second night, one of them played back a tape recorded between 2 and 3 a.m. At first, it was only wind. Then faintly a man's voice. "Everyone sit down. Stay calm," followed by a child crying and the screech of metal. The recording ended abruptly, as if the machine had been unplugged. They returned to the exact spot the next morning and found tire marks on the dirt. Old ones, nearly faded, but deep. 12 impressions of small shoes nearby, scattered, circling the bus-shaped groove. No one could explain how they hadn't been there before. Sheriff Rowland, now retired, was called back to assist. He brought the original case files, yellowed and cracked from age. He pointed at one note written on the first day of the disappearance. Driver mentioned route change due to fallen trees. Claimed alternate road not on official map. That line became the focus. They looked through state records, forestry maps, old mining surveys. No alternate route existed near Briar Hollow. But satellite images showed something. A faint path twisting through the woods, visible only from above. It started where the bus was last seen and ended abruptly at a small clearing. A search team entered the clearing the next day. They found rusted bus parts, a rearview mirror, a torn seat cushion, and the driver's badge, corroded but legible. D. Creighton. When they dug deeper, they found something else. A set of tire tracks leading out of the clearing. Tracks that should have gone somewhere, but instead vanished mid-ground, as if the road itself had stopped existing halfway through. That night, the news station aired a special on the rediscovery of Bus 56. During the live broadcast, something eerie happened. As the anchor spoke, the background audio glitched. A faint echo cut through, the sound of laughter. Children laughing, distant and hollow. Technicians reviewed the tape for interference. None found. Parents who had lost their children 12 years earlier began to gather at the old church. They lit candles, prayed, and spoke softly about forgiveness. But one mother, Mrs. Dalton, refused. She said she saw her daughter every night standing at the edge of the woods, holding her backpack, waving silently before fading into the trees. By late autumn, the state closed the investigation again, calling it unsubstantiated folklore. But no one in Harlan slept well after that. Drivers still reported headlights deep in the forest at 3:15 a.m., always two beams moving slowly before fading into darkness. The town sealed Briar Hollow permanently, but the sound of children's laughter still echoed through the trees whenever fog rolled in, and the few who dared to drive past swore they saw something reflected in their mirrors, a yellow bus following them just long enough to disappear around the next bend. The road the bus took wasn't on any map, because it was never built for the living. By the winter of 1972, Harlan had turned ghostly. The snow made the forest even quieter. Locals avoided Briar Hollow completely. But the state wanted answers, or at least to silence the rumors. They sent a small survey crew from the Department of Transportation to document what remained of the unmarked forest road that Bus 56 was last seen driving on. The team of 4 arrived in early February. Among them was 29-year-old cartographer David Lawson. He had read every article about the missing bus since college. To him, this wasn't just work. It was a mystery begging to be solved. When they reached the barricaded path, the air felt heavy, dense, almost metallic. The snow hadn't settled there. Pine needles covered the ground instead, dry and brittle. Lawson noted that the temperature dropped 5 degrees within the first few hundred feet. His compass spun twice before pointing north again. 2 miles into the forest, they found something that didn't belong. A patch of ground where the pine trees stopped abruptly. The soil looked dark, scorched and packed tight. Buried beneath it, they found wooden planks arranged in a perfect line, like the remnants of a bridge. But there was no river, no foundation, just empty space where the ground should have continued. The crew camped overnight, setting up recorders to capture ambient noise. At 3:15 a.m., one of the men, Curtis, woke up to a faint engine sound in the distance. He stepped outside, flashlight shaking, and saw lights moving between the trees. Two beams, perfectly aligned, gliding past the clearing. He ran after them, calling out. The lights vanished, leaving behind nothing but the faint smell of exhaust. When he returned to camp, the ground where he had stood was wet. Fresh tire tracks pressed into the soil, circling the tents. The next morning, they found something under the frost near the burned patch. A piece of rusted metal curved like the edge of a bus fender. On it, barely visible, were 3 letters scratched into the paint. Number 56. David Lawson wrapped it carefully and took it back to Harlan. He turned it in to Sheriff Rowland, who immediately ordered the clearing sealed. 2 weeks later, Lawson disappeared. His car was found by the roadside near Briar Hollow, keys still in the ignition. In his glove box was a cassette recorder. When police pressed play, a single line was audible under the static. They're still on the road. But the road isn't real. That tape was never released publicly. But years later, his sister gave an interview saying David had called her the night before he vanished. He told her he discovered that the old forest road had once been part of a mining route, closed and buried in 1939 after a tunnel collapse killed 14 workers. No record showed it had ever been reopened. When he compared the mine layout to satellite photos, something matched. The bus route followed the exact path of the collapsed tunnel. He believed the road that appeared in 1968 was built over a hollow stretch of earth, weakened and unstable. If the bus drove over it, the ground could have given way, swallowing the entire vehicle into the pit. It sounded logical, but it didn't explain the lights, or the tire tracks that appeared years later. After Lawson's disappearance, the site was closed for good. But the forest didn't stay quiet. Campers reported the sound of a motor idling deep underground. Sometimes they heard children singing softly, old school songs, broken by static, as if played through an ancient radio. In 1974, a group of spelunkers found a hidden opening in the hillside, about 2 miles south of the original clearing. Inside, the air smelled of fuel. They crawled nearly 30 feet down before their flashlights hit metal. The side of a vehicle, yellow, with cracked glass windows. They screamed and climbed out, refusing to go back. By the time authorities returned, the entrance had caved in. Only one photograph survived, a blurry image of corroded metal marked with faint white paint. County school dissed. Experts said it could have been an old mining truck. But locals didn't believe that. They said the forest had swallowed Bus 56 whole and that the ground shifted to keep it hidden. Some even claimed the children weren't dead at all, but trapped between worlds, forever driving, forever lost on the road that shouldn't exist. Years later, when construction crews tried to cut through the area for a new highway, their machinery failed. Engines died without reason, batteries drained in seconds. And one operator swore he saw a reflection in his bulldozer's glass, a little girl staring back at him from behind the seat, holding a lunchbox. After that, the project was abandoned. The company cited unstable terrain. But the locals knew better. Every few winters, when the fog settles low over Harlan, people say you can hear it again. The soft growl of an engine. The hiss of old brakes. And children laughing, far away where the trees meet the mist. No one follows the sound anymore, because everyone knows, once you step onto that forgotten road, you might not come back. By 1980, the legend of Bus 56 had become folklore in Harlan. Teenagers dared each other to drive down the forgotten forest road. Most came back laughing. Some came back pale and silent. On the night of October 17th, a local radio host named Frank Delaney decided to do a Halloween special. He planned to broadcast live from the site where Bus 56 vanished. His co-host warned him not to. Frank laughed it off. "It's just a story," he said. At 11:58 p.m., his van parked at the dead end of the old logging road. He set up his tape recorder and microphone. "If any spirits of Bus 56 are listening," he joked on air, "tell us where you've been hiding." Static crackled through the speakers. Then a faint sound, a low rumble like an engine idling far away. Frank turned down the gain. The forest went silent. Then a metallic screech. Tires on gravel. The radio picked up faint children's voices, overlapping, distorted. "We want to go home." "It's so cold." "Please stop the bus." Frank froze. It's a prank," he said nervously. He stepped outside, leaving the tape running. His flashlight caught something through the trees, a faint pair of lights, like old headlights glowing deep in the fog. He moved closer. The smell of gasoline hit him. The sound of an engine grew louder, but it was off rhythm, unnatural. Then came a loud bang, like a door slamming shut. Birds scattered from the treetops. Back in town, the live broadcast cut off abruptly. Listeners heard one last phrase through the static, Frank's trembling voice. "There's someone in the driver's seat." The next morning, search teams found his van abandoned. The engine was cold. The door was open. On the passenger seat lay the microphone, still recording. The last 10 seconds of tape captured something no one could explain, a child's laughter. Then a whisper, "The road remembers." Since that night, locals say every October 17th, around midnight, headlights appear along the tree line for exactly 3 minutes. The same old engine sound echoes through the woods, and the air smells of rust and exhaust. Some say the forest finally spoke back. Others believe Bus 56 returned that night, still searching for a way home. In 1983, 15 years after Bus 56 vanished, the town of Harlan had almost stopped talking about it. The parents had either moved away or died waiting. The forest had reclaimed the road. Only one person still visited that area every year, the bus driver's brother, Earl McCaffrey. Earl was a retired miner. He believed his brother hadn't crashed, but had been taken. Each year on October 17th, he drove his pickup to the edge of the forest, parked near the old sign that once read Bus Route 56, and left a lantern on the road. On a foggy night that year, a storm rolled in. Lightning flashed over the ridge, and Earl's truck headlights flickered. When he stepped out, he saw 2 beams of light through the fog ahead, round, steady, like old bus headlights. He froze. The sound of a diesel engine echoed faintly, followed by the squeal of brakes. The smell of exhaust filled the air. Earl shouted his brother's name. No answer. He grabbed the lantern and walked toward the light. The forest seemed to breathe around him. The trees swayed, but there was no wind. Then he saw it. Bus 56, covered in moss. Windows cracked, headlights dimly glowing. Inside, empty seats. The driver's cap still on the wheel. But this time, there was movement. A small shadow pressed its hand against the glass. Then another. 12 small handprints appeared one by one, just like the ones found years ago. Earl's lantern flickered. A faint whisper came from the bus. Children's voices. Laughing, then crying. The air turned cold. Earl tried to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. The bus door creaked open. A single small figure stood in the doorway, a boy in an old jacket, soaked and pale. "Are you here to take us home?" the boy asked. Before Earl could answer, the lights of the bus flared bright, blinding him. Then, silence. When a rescue team found Earl's truck the next morning, it was still running. The lantern sat in the passenger seat. Earl was gone. The only thing left behind was a trail of small, wet footprints leading toward the woods, and a child's voice faintly recorded on his dash recorder saying, "Everyone's home now." To this day, no one drives the forgotten road after dark. Locals say the forest still whispers when it rains, and if you listen closely, you can hear the faint rumble of an engine deep between the pines, as Bus 56 carries its passengers through an endless road that leads nowhere.